Welcome to the Big Game Hunting Podcast, where we help hunters like you prepare for the big game hunting adventures you've always dreamed of. Now, here's your host, John McAdams.
Hello, John McAdams here. Welcome to episode 294 of the Big Game Hunting Podcast. Next up in our ongoing Africa hunting mini-series is an interview with a man named Scott Spanton. Now, Scott is a longtime podcast listener from Australia, and he has actually hunted in South Africa with big game hunting adventures twice, once in April of 2022 and once in October of 2023. Each time he had a great hunt, but the conditions on both of those trips were very, very different. So for this reason, Scott actually has a pretty unique perspective on what it is like to hunt very early in the hunting season versus very late in the hunting season. There's pros and cons of doing it both ways, and he'll be able to talk about that with us today. Plus, he also used rifles in 7mm Remington Magnum and 300 Winchester Short Magnum on those hunts to hunt plains game, and he can share some personal anecdotes and experiences on how those two cartridges worked over there. And of course, we also talk about a few lessons Scott learned along the way and share some of the more memorable aspects of each hunt. This is going to be a great episode, but before we get started talking to Scott, I will be at SCI in Nashville, 1 to 3 February 2024. I would love to meet you while I'm there. Kubis and Christian, who are two of my professional hunters from Africa, they'll be there too. Now, Christian was in episode 261 that we recorded on the podcast hunt in Africa back in May of 2023. Kubis actually guided Scott on both of his hunts, and Scott talks a lot about Kubis in this episode. You'll get to meet both of those guys in Nashville. So if you have hunted with them in the past, or you're going on a hunt with us in the future, or if you're thinking about going on a hunt with us in the future, or if you just want to come by and say hello, Kubis, Christian, and I would love to meet you. We will be wandering the show floor during the day, but we will be at the Bridge Bar in the Renaissance Nashville Hotel after the show, 7 to 9 p.m. on Thursday, 1 February, and Friday, 2 February. That is the best place to meet up with us. So come by, say hello, have a drink with us. We can swap some stories about Africa or hunting or just whatever you want to talk about. I would love to meet you. The address is 611 Commerce Street, Nashville, Texas, 37203. So please come by, say hello as it fits in your schedule. No need to RSVP or anything like that. This is an informal meet and greet. You can come and stop by anytime you'd like. But if you want to, shoot me an email, john@thebiggamehuntingblog.com, and give me a heads up that you're planning on stopping by. I'll give you my phone number. You can shoot me a text and we can coordinate things if necessary, all that stuff. I have a couple of really cool pieces of Big Game Hunting Podcast swag I will give to the first 5 podcast listeners who come by and say hello to me at the show. So like I said, stop by the Bridge Bar at the Renaissance Nashville Hotel, 7 to 9 p.m. Thursday and Friday. I look forward to seeing you there. Now, next up, please do me a big favor, hit that subscribe or follow button in the podcast app you are listening to this episode on. And if you haven't already done so, please leave a rating and or a review for the show. Doing both of those things helps me reach other hunters like you, and you'll also start to receive future episodes automatically after you subscribe. Okay, let's get started talking to Scott about his hunts in Africa with big game hunting adventures. All right, well, Scott, it is a pleasure talking with you today. Thank you so much for joining me on the show.
Thank you, John. As they say, long-time listener, first-time caller.
There you go, right? You and I have been talking pretty regularly over email for maybe over about 2 years now, it seems like.
Yeah, two, maybe a little bit more. Yep.
So before we dive into talking about your hunts, I got to ask you, how did you find the Big Game Hunting Podcast?
I was doing some research initially, and I came across your website, which, oh my goodness, you're a prolific writer. The amount of research and resources you have there was fantastic, and it was from there that I found that you had a podcast, and went over to your podcast, and haven't looked back. There's 2 podcasts I listen to religiously, one of which is yours, and love it.
Oh, awesome. Well, that is wonderful, man. And like you said, I do a ton of writing and I get a lot of people that go through there and a lot of people find the podcast that way. And then there's just as many people that seem like it's the opposite where they find the podcast and they're like, oh, this guy's got a blog too. I'll check out his articles.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
It can go either way.
So, you and I were talking before we started recording that you do a lot. You live in Australia and you do a lot of hunting in that part of the world. What made you want to go hunt in Africa?
It was probably coming through COVID, hadn't done much travel or hunting for a while, and had been listening to your blog, and it was actually one of your emails you sent out with the, I think it was the Toyota email about animals just wanting to get shot, literally that piqued my attention, and looked at it. The pricing all seemed very reasonable, surprisingly reasonable for what it was, and it was something I'd always wanted to do, and decided, look, before I get too old or decrepit, I better just start doing some of these things rather than putting it off till later.
Okay, good deal. Yeah, that I remember that email. I thought that commercial, it was a news. So for those that don't know what we're talking about, there was a Toyota Hilux commercial that aired in New Zealand, I don't know, maybe 6, 7, 8 years ago or something like that. And all of the animals that these people were encountering in it were like jumping in front of the car, like so that they could ride in it. Like there was a stag that came out and basically asked these guys to shoot him, and there were fish that were jumping in the boat and all that stuff. It was really silly and crazy. And so I wrote an email joking about that, and clearly it resonated with some people. I wasn't the only one that thought it was really funny.
Yeah, my sense of humor.
Well, so you and I talked about this hunt probably about 2 years ago, and we got you set up, and you went over April of 2022, if I recall correctly. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah, it was March, April. I think
okay.
Probably April. Yeah.
And so we'll talk about the actual hunt here in a second. But as a guy that you're a gun guy and you're also a hunter, did you do any sort of special preparation for this hunt that was different from what you were doing for anything else, any other hunting that you're doing?
Wasn't quite sure what to expect. I can't remember, was this hunt or the previous one, whether I did a lot of practice off sticks. No, it was no, I didn't have any sticks to practice off. It was my second Africa hunt that I've been doing a lot of practicing off sticks ever since. But no, there wasn't a lot of prep. I wanted to make sure my rifle was shooting well. So spent quite a bit of time at the range. Wasn't sure what to expect on distances, although everyone had said the distances won't be great, which it turned out to be. I was a little bit concerned about physical fitness, but there was no need to be concerned about physical fitness. It was, other than heat at times, it was very easy physically. So yeah, there wasn't a great deal of prep on it, other than doing probably a lot of reading and hearing other people's experiences, quite frankly.
And so we'll talk about the travel aspects of this hunt at the end for you. And so that'll be a very, very interesting deal, especially for those other prospective hunters that are from Australia and New Zealand and whatnot, because you went there a very different way from all the Americans do, because you live in a completely different part of the world. But so that first hunt was in April. Your second hunt, you just got back from. You were there October of 2023. So you had a very, very early season hunt and then a very, very late season hunt. Was it just night and day, the terrain, not necessarily the terrain, but the vegetation and just how things were there going those different times of year?
Yeah, not quite night and day, but it was very different. The October, it was incredibly dry, like they were crying out for rain, and so you really notice the difference in the terrain and the flora, the trees and whatnot, and the bushes. But yeah, the temperature difference was dramatic. But we're probably used to fairly hot times here at Australia a lot of the time, so I wasn't too concerned on that.
The temperature change from April to October was dramatic, you say?
Yeah, October was very, very hot. Would have been high in Celsius, high 30s to 40 degrees at times, and where it was a bit cooler in April. April, we needed probably more jackets to wear every morning and whatnot till it warmed up.
And when you were there in April, did it rain when you were like actually there on the ground?
Yeah, there was a bit of rain. actually part of the property we weren't able to get to for quite some time because it was blocked off by flooding of the ground, where some of the black soil, the mud that occurs there, you just can't get through for love or money. We actually spent the last 3 days of my hunt, we spent chasing a waterbuck trying to get to it, and the final day we decided we're just going through it no matter what. And we can cover that shortly, but we walked through about a mile and a half of knee-deep water to get to an area.
That was an especially wet year last year. You know, everyone talks about El Nino and all of that stuff, but it definitely does seem like it works on a cycle over there, where last year got lots and lots of rain, and then it rained later into the year. It usually doesn't rain that much into April like that. And this year we got a little bit less, and it stopped raining sooner. And this year it's looking like it's probably going to be a little bit less than was the case last year. For those that are listening to this, we're recording in late December 2023. They got 100 millimeters of rain there last night. So it is, wow. It's right in the middle of the rainy season now, but like this is when it's supposed to rain, is in December and January, not just pouring down rain and still have that much standing water into April, but weird things happen sometimes. Well, so let's talk about the guns that you brought on these hunts and the different ammo that you use. So we'll start with your first hunt.
Okay. With the 2022 hunt, I took what I think is my favorite rifle. I had a Tikka 300 WSM, Tikka T3X, that was all factory except I'd replaced the stock. Had a carbon fiber stock made for it out of New Zealand, a group called High Tech, which I love. But it was firing the Federal Terminal Ascent 200 grain factory ammo, and it was an absolute hammer. Loved it.
You were the first guy that we had hunt Africa with us with with any type of Terminal Ascent bullet. I'd had familiar experiences with them in the United States and whatnot, but you're the first guy going to Africa with it, because it was still a pretty new round when you hunted last year. And my goodness, got quite the results on your hunt. We'll talk about that here in a second. And everybody else that has come with those bullets too. We've had several bring them in 30-06 and 300 Win Mag, and your experiences, let's just say, were not unique with them too. So let's talk about the story of your 2022 hunt, and just from a 30,000 foot view, and we'll dive into details as necessary, and we'll talk about travel at the end of it, like I said.
Yeah. Look, had an absolute ball. That as I said, that rifle. I ended up with seven wonderful animals on the ground. I think 5 or 6 of them were single shot kills. It was just so incredibly effective, that ammunition. And I actually came across it from listening to, I think it was Joseph von Benedict's podcast, and he spoke very highly of it. And so I tried it out, and it shot very well out of my Tikka. As I said, I don't hand load, or not until now. I haven't hand loaded. And it just shot very well, and I used it quite a lot in Australia, and it was super effective over here on pigs and deer and whatnot. So I decided that's what I would take over there. But yeah, as I said, ended up with 7 really great animals. Probably the highlight for me was my waterbuck, which I got on the last day, followed by a kudu, which I got on second or third day. But very first animal I got over there was blue wildebeest, which was, I know you've taken years to get yours, but I was lucky enough to get the very first animal I got was a blue wildebeest. And as Kobos said after I'd shot that, he said, "I'm very relieved we've got this already. They're a tough bugger, and I'm glad we got that out of the way." So also got a black wildebeest, which I absolutely loved. A nice impala, a gemsbok, which I'd always wanted, and got a great zebra. The zebra rug is beautiful at home. So ended up with those 7 fantastic animals, hunting both at your property as well as a handful of others.
Yeah, we had to. That was something we had to kind of scramble on with you too, because like you said, with the weather being the way it was and a big chunk of the property like that being inaccessible, luckily you got some other places around there we have access, we could hunt on and whatnot, and give the water a chance to go down, and then like you said, just say the heck with it on the last day and go into it.
Yeah.
Well, tell us about that water buck. I know that was something that was especially special to you, and that wasn't something that you planned on hunting going over there, was it?
No, not at all. And the only thing I know about hunting over there is whatever you decide you're going to hunt, you're going to add to it by the time you get over there. It's just yeah, just incredible. But I actually hadn't seen a waterbuck before, and we were in the lodge having dinner one night, and there were a few taxidermy mounts around the room, and I saw one sitting there. I said, "What's that?" And Cobus goes, "Oh, it's a waterbuck." I go, "Oh, wow, that's incredibly majestic and beautiful." And he goes, "I think I've seen a bigger one than that right down the back of the property." And I said, "Really?" I didn't quite believe him. I said, "Really, bigger than that?" Because it was quite a big one you had in there. And so I said, "Right, well, let's add it to the list." And we'd got through most of the other things that we were doing, and we hadn't actually seen him for the whole time I'd been there. I think the first hunt was 7 days or 8 days, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but we hadn't seen him. I really wanted him by this stage because I got to see this taxidermy mount in the lodge each day, and I was stirring Cobus up, and Cobus told me how much he hated ostriches and they're horrible eating meat and whatever else. But I told him if we don't get this waterbuck, I'm going to shoot an ostrich and he's going to have to eat it or skin it. He thinks skinning them is the most disgusting thing ever. They just stink. But so that was the threat. And anyway, we tried to get to that part of the property one day, couldn't get there. The next day we tried again, couldn't get anywhere. Finally got to about the third day, and we said, like, okay, stuff it. We've got to get out there. We won't go by vehicle. We'll just walk, and we'll work out how to recover him if we get him anyway. So, but we got up very early. Ended up walking. It was about 2 kilometers, 2.5 kilometers, about a mile and a half through ankle to knee deep water. And the lower Renegade boots that I had were wonderful. I didn't get wet at all inside, despite being fully covered. We got down to where we thought he would be, and it was still early in the morning. There was a lot of dew around, and Cobus said, I think he'd be coming out to get into the sun to dry off. And as we came around a corner, we saw him about 200 meters away. And Cobus looked at me and goes, "See, told you he was big. Told you he was big." I said, "Yeah, very good." He goes, "Let's get closer." So we went behind some bushes and tried sneaking up a little bit quieter to get to probably within 100 meters, and we came out to where we thought we should be, and he was gone. And it was like, oh God. But he was incredible when I saw him, with the mist coming off the ground and the steam coming off the ground from warming up, and he was standing there. But Cobus said, "Look, just wait. I think he'll come back out. It's wet out in the rest of the bushes. He'll want to come out and dry off, or get warmer." So we said, "Let's wait here for 5-10 minutes." We waited and waited, had the sticks there, and we got to the point where it's like, okay, he's just not coming back. So we're about to leave, and then all of a sudden Cobus goes, "Stop." And we looked up, and there he was. He'd come straight back out. And I got on the sticks, and Cobus said, "Can you take him?" I said, "Yes." And then it was a full frontal shot. He was facing towards us, and so I had the 300 WSM and hit him in the chest. Didn't really hear the big thwack that you expect, and he bolted off. And I said, "Cobus, how was that?" And he goes, "I definitely hit, strong hit." I saw him rear up, and which I didn't. So then we went to try and find him, and we walked down there and walking around. We couldn't find any blood or any trace of him, and by that stage, I'm getting a little bit distressed. I'm a bit concerned that I've either missed him or worse, that I've wounded him, because we didn't see any blood. But then, yeah, my heart sank, because this is the one I really wanted more than anything after seeing him. And we walked a bit further, and Cobus found the tiniest little bit of blood, like about half the size of your smallest fingernail, on a branch or on a bush on the ground, and that lifted my spirits considerably.
Mm-hmm.
So then we started looking a bit more. We split up at that stage, and I went one direction, he went the other. And then as I was looking through some bushes, I saw something that looked a bit out of place, and sure enough, it was his horns sticking up. And but that took all of about probably 15 minutes of us walking around looking for him. And as I said, I was a little bit distressed that I'd potentially messed it up. But no, we found him about 80 yards from where I'd shot at him. It was a single shot through the chest, and it did its job. He crashed into a tree and died on the spot.
And so went less than 100 yards
when I found him.
Um,
Yeah, it was. It might have been 80 to 120.
Mm-hmm. And tell me again how far the actual shot was.
Oh yeah, about 120, maybe 140 meters.
Yeah, so
call it 150 yards or something.
Yeah, a long-ish shot for that area, but not super long or anything like that either, but right through the chest like that. And was that, we can talk more about this when we talk about the caliber comparison later, but did you recover that bullet?
Yes, we did. Yeah, it had penetrated quite some way, and it looked fantastic.
Mm-hmm. Now, that was a really cool story. I remember you emailing me after the hunt saying, what a deal that was. You spent multiple days looking for him, and then you finally get the shot on him towards the end of the hunt after walking through the water and everything for it. And it is amazing how the animals like that you have to work the hardest for are the ones that you really seem to appreciate the most, right?
Oh, absolutely. There was one or two there that was very quick and easy, for want of a better word, which don't compare in my mind to the work we had to put in for the waterbuck. And he was special for me, and definitely got a case of buck fever when I saw him through the scope, and got a little bit nervous. Could feel the heart rate going.
Yeah, did Kubas tell you about my waterbuck when you were there?
Yeah, he did. Traveling through the crocodile-infested waters to recover it.
Oh, man.
I think he deserves more money.
Yeah. Yeah, man, I shot that waterbuck, and I was really excited when I shot him. And I made a good hit on him, and he ran 50 yards and stood there. And he was like standing on the edge of the riverbank. And they're like, all right, listen, just settle down. You made a good shot. Shoot him again here, and hopefully he's not going to run anymore. And I had to take like 30 seconds to kind of calm down and with my breathing and everything. And I made a good shot. And then when I shot him, he dropped on the spot and then rolled down into the river when I did it. But all's well that ends well. We got a good story out of it with the crocodiles too.
Yeah.
But so your shots on that hunt, what was your typical shooting range on that first hunt?
Yeah, under 100 yards.
Mm-hmm.
I think the longest two were the Gemsbok and the Waterbuck, which were over 100 yards. I think the Gemsbok was close to 200, which was long shot. But that was, again, it was a very quick hunt, that one. But everything else was within 100. The kudu was probably 60 yards. The impala was probably similar. The wildebeest, both similar, between 60 and 100 yards. The zebra was probably about 120 yards.
Mm-hmm. All of those off of sticks, or did you shoot one of them prone?
The black wildebeest, I shot prone.
Mm-hmm.
With black wildebeest was a bit funny. It was the same day I shot my first blue wildebeest, or my blue wildebeest, and we went out exploring a bit more, and came across black wildebeest, which I didn't know much about. And Cub was going, "Oh that's a really big black wildebeest." And I was sitting there going, "Well, I've already got a blue wildebeest, don't want a black one." And then he kept on telling me how big it was, and I was looking at it through the camera and taking a few photos, and then got my little book out and wanted, because I didn't know how much a black wildebeest was, whether it was going to be $50 or $5,000, and I didn't want another $5,000 beast. So looked it up and saw, well, it's actually quite good value. And so then I said, "Cover, actually, let's take him." And as soon as we started to take him, they took off. Whereas we'd had 10 minutes of just watching him and taking photos, where it could have taken him any time. But as soon as I decided it was game on, they all bolted. So we spent about an hour and a half following them, and eventually got a shot which was prone, actually. And took him. That was again full frontal, and dropped him on the spot.
Now, with some of these shorter shots that you were taking, say like on the kudu and whatnot, that were 40, 50, 60 yards, was it in pretty thick areas there, and you're shooting through like a little window in the bush? Yeah,
the kudu was. We'd spent most of the day trying to track one particular kudu that we'd seen earlier that day. And I'll tell you, the first time you see those corkscrew antlers through some bushes rustling around, it makes your heart rate skip a few beats. But the kudu was a quick shot through some bushes that was only, as say, probably 60 meters.
Mm-hmm.
the impala was on a road somewhere. We shot that. That was fairly straightforward. The zebra was through some bushes, but it wasn't a terribly difficult shot. The gemsbok was similar. There were bushes there, but the kudu was probably the toughest one of the lot, and the waterbuck in terms of the effort that we put in there on that first hunt.
Mm-hmm. Now, you also had a benefit, too, of hunting there very early in the year. You were only our third hunter of the year. We had a guy there in March that was after buffalo, another guy there before you for Plains game, and then you were there, and you were one of the first guys to hunt that place in a long time, and it had not been hunted very heavily when you got there on that first trip. And so, you have the difficulties associated with it being a thicker area like that on that first hunt, but also with game that hadn't been messed with that much that year. So that
was part of the attraction as to when you described it to me, that it hasn't given COVID and everything else, that it hasn't been heavily hunted for some time, which that resonated with me a bit too.
Now, anything else you want to talk about with this hunt before we move on to your 2023 hunt?
Probably just a little bit of thanks to you in terms of how easy you made it. Although I think you're probably going to cover logistics down the track, but look, I'm a fairly organized person. I'm a good Virgo. I like lists for everything, but you made it incredibly seamless in terms of the process and took all the headache away. Where it was, everything was organized. There was literally nothing that I wanted for or needed to understand. You'd organized it all, and even from as soon as you arrive and they pick you up and take you everywhere, and anyway, I think you do an incredible job in terms of organizing things, in terms of organizing dates for people and when the best time to hunt is, and the logistics of what they need to deal with. You made it incredibly easy.
Well, awesome. I'm really glad to hear that. And, like you, I'm a pretty organized guy myself, and I developed a lot of the stuff, the way I do things, based off of frustration I had with previous hunts, with not getting answers to the questions that I was asking, and just the questions I was asking myself. Okay, what do I need to do this? Never been to this country before. How do I bring a rifle? What do I do when I get to the airport? All of that stuff, and then either getting insufficient answers or just not getting answers to that stuff and having to go figure it out. I've just made myself a system where I just tell people, okay, here's the deal when you get there. And I'm glad to hear that you appreciated that and everything worked well with you, especially with all the logistical side of things like that.
Yeah, and what to expect culturally and tipping and everything else, that the manual that you put together, which is, 15, 20 pages of great detail. It explains everything in a great amount of detail. Like, as I said, I'm reasonably organized, but I think you're military organized, which is very reassuring from a customer's point of view.
Well, I'm glad to hear it. Well, so you had some of the first time butterflies on this first trip. Never been to South Africa before, any of that stuff. You did it. Things go well. You decide you're going to go back and hunt again. So now it's more familiar to you. You've flown to South Africa before. You brought guns to South Africa before. You knew Kubis at this point. You'd hunted with him. You were going to hunt again with him on this trip, but completely different time of year though. Very early in the dry season, very early in the dry season versus very late in the dry season, completely different weather, all that stuff. So tell us about your hunt this year.
Yeah, this year, look, I fell in love with Africa the first time there. Well, I think once you get it in your blood, you're not going to get rid of it. So it was, as soon as I'd left, I'd already started thinking about when can I come back? And I wanted to come back I traveled on my own the first time, and I intended on bringing a friend with me the second time round, which we organised a date with you, and then he cancelled, which was a pain. But then I had some problems with dates, so I mucked you guys around a little bit with dates, but we ended up deciding on October. And you did tell me how hot it was going to be, very hot. But I'm used to hot hunting out here, so I was sort of fine with that. But really wanted to have a longer hunt and go for a greater variety of animals. It was the one thing that I really noticed that first time there was just how incredible the vast number of species are that you have there that are available. And like that first hunt, when I had 7 animals, as I've heard someone else say before, you get 10 years worth of hunting in 10 days over in Africa, where I'm going to go on a hunt later on, or early next year, what is it? It is 24. and I'll be out there for a week for one animal, which isn't unusual for us. Whereas in a week in Africa, I've got 7 animals, and you really get to experience how well you and your rifle system works. Whereas if I go on this hunt in New Zealand in May, I'll probably fire 1, maybe 2 shots, and you don't really get to work out how your system's working. Whereas in Africa, you fire a shot on the first animal, then you learn from that, and the second one and third one, and you really get to test everything out, which is incredible. And the experience you get is amazing over there. So I decided I also wanted to do more animals, or a greater number of them, because pretty much all of the animals that I had with my first hunt, I'd had Euro mounts made of, except for 2 of them, being the Gemsbok and the Waterbuck. But I wish I'd done my kudu, quite frankly. Whereas this hunt, I decided I was going to do pretty much everything I got as a shoulder mount, hopefully. And yeah, so I got a bigger list of different animals. A bunch of them were double ups. I still wanted to get another kudu, another impala, another Hemsbok, and another zebra. The zebra rug is, as I said, looks fantastic at home. I don't get to hang many of my trophies at home. My wife and kids all freak out about animals with eyes staring down on them. So I've got a few rugs and got a few Euros around the place, but I'm in the process of getting another property to put all my man cave stuff in.
Well, that's one way to do it. All right.
Yeah.
So what'd you bring for guns on the second hunt?
Okay. During just before my first Africa trip, it was again through COVID and having the irrits with not being able to hunt or do anything. I decided to get a custom rifle made. I thought it was something I'd always wanted to do. So I hadn't been spending much money on hunting, so I had some money to spend on a custom. So I decided I wanted a 7 Rem Mag, and got a fancy pants rifle made with the proof research barrel, still attack, 300 action, lovely loophole VX6 scope. It's probably overscoped, and a great carbon fiber stock, Timney trigger. Got it back, and it shot very, very ordinary. Any factory ammo I put in it, it was very average. My tickers that are a quarter of the price outshot them dramatically.
Geez. That's frustrating.
Yeah. So annoying. And spoke to the gunsmith, said, you got to do hand loads. I said, well, why do I have to do hand loads? I don't really have the time for it. My tickers shoot great. But anyway, he got me onto hand loading, and again, it was tough getting a load to shoot well. He developed a load for me, but it was a what do I have? It was a Berger 180D VLD H, which shot really well. But I didn't think it was going to be that appropriate for Africa. The more I looked into it, in terms of its terminal performance, the more I was concerned. And you flagged that with me as well, given how quickly they expand and with lack of sort of penetration. The other load it shot really well was a full copper load, which was a 135 grain atomic. It's an Australian made. It's a milled projectile, similar to the hammer projectiles, I think, where they're milled with CNC lathes to sort of within a micron or 2 of each bullet, so they're all basically identical, as opposed to molded projectiles, and they shoot incredibly well. They shoot really, really accurately. But BC isn't great on them, and but anyway, I got those 2 loads to work really well. So I decided to bring that because I'd always wanted to bring it to Africa, but I was still a little bit dubious on it, and I also bought my 300 because it's always been so good to me.
Mm-hmm. And so you brought was it the exact same 300 short mag that you brought on the first hunt?
Yep, exact same 300 short mag, Winchester short mag that I bought the first time. When I was in Africa the first time over there, we shot off sticks, and I absolutely love shooting off sticks. And while I was over there, I got on Amazon and ordered a pair of the same sticks that I had there, and got them sent back to Australia. So I take them hunting everywhere now. I love shooting off sticks when I can, and they're very lightweight to carry around. So I got to do a lot of practice on those before my second hunt.
Yeah, I have that exact set of sticks too. Was it the Vanguard? Is it Vanguard brand?
Yes,
tripod?
Vanguard, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Has just a real simple cradle on the top of it, and that's actually what I use to shoot that big hog with a couple months ago with my 458 Win Mag with the thermal on it.
Yep.
So you brought.
So they're cheap and easy, and they're light as and easy to carry around, and they press down to very, very short size that you can put in a suitcase.
And you got 3 legs on them too, so they're pretty darn stable as well. And so you had spent some time now practicing not only off the sticks, but off the exact same sticks that you were going to be using there.
I took them with me to Africa to make sure that I had the exact same
the exact ones. There you go.
In case Cobus had broken the other ones or whatever it may be. I thought, for the sake of a little bit extra luggage, I'll take them as well.
And so on this hunt, you wanted, say, a bigger kudu. You wanted probably a sable. What else was on your mind?
Yeah, look, sable was my number one. It was something that I'd fallen in love with previously. I thought they were incredibly majestic. Wanted another impala. Really loved the impala horns that I had at home, but wanted to get a shoulder mount of that. Another zebra. The first hunt we couldn't find a warthog for love or money, and it was something that's always been on my list. So I wanted to get another warthog. I wanted to get a warthog. Wasn't sure on eland. That was sort of possibly on the list or possibly not. Another gemsbok I wanted. I found that to be an incredibly beautiful trophy that I had at home, so I would like to get another one of those if I could. And that was pretty much it. And then we'd play it by ear as to what else sort of popped up. So, but I ended up doubling up on a few things, but which was great.
Yeah. Did you notice a big difference in the warthog population when you were there in 2022 versus 2023?
I noticed a massive difference in everything in 23 versus 22. The variety of species and number of animals in 23 was probably 5-fold what it was in 22. Through I think probably good management and having good seasons, and I'm not sure you can probably talk to that, but it was dramatic difference in animals that we saw immediately.
It is interesting how that works. One, I think there probably were more animals there too. But the other side of it too, being there in October, even if there were the same number of animals there, you could probably just see them better with the bush being so much more open as well.
Yeah, the bush was a lot thinner. And I think you had more water opportunities for them as well, which was attractive to them. That's how we actually got our kudu on one day. It was at another property, but we'd seen a big kudu in the morning, and I can tell the story about this shortly, but we ended up waiting out by the only water source for a couple of miles around, and on the basis that we thought he'd come back in the afternoon, and he did.
Yeah, one of the things you talk about the management and whatnot, if you have good water there during the dry season and you have a good supply of food and whatnot, animals, especially kudu, really seem to actually really a lot of them, but kudu are one of the big ones. They really move around a lot in the dry season. It seems like when they're just in search of food, they don't have a lot of fat reserves, especially you get into September, October. They've burned through a lot of what they had. And if they find a spot where things are good, they go in there and they stay. And then, especially if you have a bunch of females that go in there and find a spot that really like it, the males are just going to find them later in the year. Like we joked about before your hunts, like a nightclub, man. You have food and you have ladies, the men are going to show up. They're going to find the place. So, well, tell us about some of the highlights of this particular hunt.
Yeah. Look, it all started really quickly. I arrived on Saturday morning and we went out Saturday afternoon. Actually, I arrived on Friday, but we stayed overnight in outside of Joburg and left very early Saturday morning. Got to the lodge early morning on Saturday. Went out in the afternoon for a look around and was amazed by the number of animals that we saw. And had a fleeting shot at a warthog on the run, which I probably shouldn't have done. Went probably 2 feet behind him, and that was a bad first thing to have on the video that I was having made. But it was a great first day. It was just exciting to be there. But the next 3 days, we got 7 animals in the first 3 days.
Oh my goodness!
It was. I was starting to wonder what I was going to do for the second half of the week. But on the Sunday, we spent so much time chasing zebras, we just couldn't get near them for love or money. Or I didn't actually. We saw lots of tracks, but I never saw them. And I was stirring film on the tracker and Cobos that I don't believe they're actually here. You guys are just making enough about these zebra tracks. But we were following some zebras, and Cobra stopped, and we were in some really thick bush actually, and so there was a really big impala ram. So we watched him for a while. Couldn't quite get a straight, a clear shot at him through there, but eventually one came through when he was facing away from us, and I took him through the center of the back, and that dropped him immediately. So got a great impala that first day. Then when we were driving somewhere else, we came across a really, really old female warthog, sow warthog. And Cobus was very excited about it. So if you don't shoot this, I'm going to. So I said, okay, as much as I wanted a boar, I took that shot, and that was probably one of the longest shots we had, which was probably 160 meters or something, I think. Best part of almost 200 yards. And but that was with the 7mm. Both the hog was actually with the 7mm. The impala was the 300.
Okay.
And that dropped. She was such an old dinosaur. All the other boys that saw it thought it was probably the biggest sow they'd seen. And that day we also got a zebra finally. So first day I got an impala, a warthog, and a zebra. We started talking that night about my sable, and that they'd seen a group of 3 large bulls in one particular area on the property. So we decided the next morning we'd get up early and go looking for them. And we were able to get probably my big 2 that day, being the sable and a gemsbok later on in the day. But the sable was sort of quartering towards me. It was again a frontal shot. Had the 300, dropped it immediately in its tracks. Really massive entry wound. Actually, it was on shot through the neck, and it was very surprising. I can't quite explain it, but anyway, it all worked.
I remember being surprised by that too. It showed it in the video, just how big that entrance wound was in the neck.
It was a shock as I picked up the antler and turned around. I was like, "Oh my god!"
Yeah, what happened to my shoulder mount here?
Less CG rated than that, but it was like, and it had penetrated through the neck and then out through the other side of the spine. So that was my number one that I wanted more than anything, and he was a beautiful big boy. And whereas the gemsbok later on that day was some of the worst shooting I've done in my life. And first shot I thought was a good shot, and Cobus wasn't so sure, probably from the sound. Anyway, we spent 2 miles, 3.5 kilometers chasing this gemsbok.
Oh, jeez.
Took me a bunch of shots. Very embarrassed about how bad it was. We were shooting through thick bush at that time, and everything was trying to kill you. Every bush had spikes on it that were trying to rip you apart. So it was and it was hot. It was later in the day, and it was really hot. And anyway, we earned our supper that day. But we did recover him and got him, and was very happy. It was quite a bit bigger than the cow that I shot last year in gemsbok. So I was really happy with that, but I was very disappointed in myself.
Well, I've been there, and I know what it's like, and that is no fun when that happens, but it does happen sometimes despite our best efforts.
Yeah. What was great was watching Kobos and Philemon track this animal through incredibly thick vegetation and just never give up. It was fantastic.
Yeah, so now we've got, you say you got an impala, a warthog, a zebra, sable, and a gemsbok down.
Yeah. And then got another impala on the third day. I wasn't actually after another impala, but I was very keen to try out the 7mm a bit more and see whether I can love it as much as I love my 300. So I had a thought that I'd try and shoot a few of without being disrespectful, some of the cheaper animals on the list, the blessbok and the impala. Get another impala. So this is another impala ram that we saw, which was younger than the other one, but had an equally impressive rack at the end of the day. Mm-hmm. And that was shot at about 120 meters, I think it was. Yep. Mm-hmm. So that completed. It was 6 animals in the first 3 days. Sorry, not 7.
Whew, man, that's still a busy couple days, though. My goodness.
Yep. Yeah, no, it was fantastic. I got to that stage and I was like, oh my god, I'm going to have all the animals done that I want in 3 or 4 days. But no, it was a great way to start, and then it thinned out from there.
Now, I've seen that happen a lot to guys on hunt. They get off to a real fast start and then boom, 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 and then they get hung up on a couple animals for whatever reason. The animals just aren't cooperating or whatever, and then you get a bunch of animals in the first couple of days, and then I've seen guys go a week sometimes before they get their next one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, look, we were really keen on a kudu from there on in, and couldn't get near a big kudu for love or money, and it was really hot during the day, traveling around to chase those, which I didn't mind, but it was very hot. So Wednesday we got nothing, but had a great day out. It was actually at another property, because we also had baboon. I wanted a baboon on my list. That was something that, for whatever reason, I thought it would be great to have a baboon. We didn't end up getting a baboon, but we went to a lot of places trying to find them. We saw a few, but were never within shooting distance on them. So Wednesday we got nothing. By the time we got to Thursday, you had millions of blessbock at your place. There were literally everywhere, and there were a few really good ones that we saw. But decided I wouldn't mind trying the 7mm at a little bit more distance to see what it was like. And so I told Philemon and Cobus, could we have a little bit longer shot at one? And Philemon got us up to 50 meters of one of these blessbocks. I said, mate, I'm not shooting it. Either scare it away or let's go find something else. So anyway, we went a bit more searching and found one bit over 200 meters away, and there was actually two of them. One had slightly bigger horns, but Cobus told me through the binoculars, which I then realized once he told me, that one of them had a chipped horn. So we went for the other one, but that was 230 meters, call it 250 yards, and shot that through the shoulder, and I was able to recover that 7mm projectile. Like I had on the other Impala, on the second Impala that I got. But at 230 meters, I was pretty disappointed with the terminal performance of that 135 grain full copper projectile. It had mushroomed a bit, but not great at that distance, versus at the 120 meters that the other Impala was. The mushrooming on that was probably double the frontal surface diameter on that.
And so what was the difference in velocity, you think? How much faster was it going at 100 yards than 200? Do you know?
Yeah. It was only 200 feet per second difference. At 120 meters, it was doing 2,700 meters, call it. 2,700 feet, sorry, per second. By the time we got to 225, it was 2,400, so call it 300 feet per second. It started out just on 3,000 feet per second out of the muzzle.
And you said this was it atomic ammo? Is that what you said it was?
Atomic, yeah, 135 grain atomic. Super accurate out of the rifle. But when I compare the stats with my 300, I'm just realized, well, I'm in love with my 300.
Yeah, that is interesting. You know, the benefit, quote unquote, the benefit of using one of those lightweight bullets like that, you're supposed to get just a screaming flat, fast velocity and a screaming flat trajectory. And it seemed like you got that, but it had kind of a crummy BC at, 250 yards. I would still think it would be doing better than it was. Yeah,
look, I was a little bit disappointed with it. Like, when you compare the 300 versus the 7mm, like the 300 that I've got's doing 2,900 feet per second at the muzzle versus the 7mm just on 3,000. But by the time you get to 100, 200 meters, the 300's doing exactly the same velocity as the 7mm, but you've got 1,000 foot-pounds of energy more, or almost 50% in some cases, coming out of 300 and that extra frontal diameter. Like, we've got, at the muzzle, you got 2,700 foot-pounds out of the 7mm, and we've got 3,600 out of the 300. By the time we get out to 200 meters, they're both doing 2,500 feet per second. They've both dropped 1.4 MOA, and they've both, the 7mm's got 1,900 foot-pounds of energy, and the 300's got 2,900 foot-pounds of energy, which is, as I say, 1,000 foot-pounds, or more than 50% more. And you see that in the effect on the animals at the other end. It really is dramatic, particularly with that terminal ascent. projectile, and I think that's why we're maintaining such. The velocity isn't dropping nearly as much. We've got that high BC of almost 0.6 out of the 0.5, 0.6 out of the terminal ascent, versus we're about 0.4 out of the 7mm.
Yeah, it makes a big difference, don't it? Yeah, that 300 Win Mag, terminal ascent 300 Win Mag, 200 grain, 0.608 G1 BC, so fantastic G1 BC out of it. And then it also has, in addition to that heavier weight bullet with basically the same velocity, once you get out there a little bit, still has 18% more frontal surface area too. And man, you just add all that together and you get the results that you got.
Yeah, and that bonded core, the way it mushrooms and retains so much of its mass, whilst the milled 7mm projectiles retain almost 100% of their mass, the terminal ascent retains so much of it. I can't speak highly enough of it, to the point where I'm going to get another rifle built. I'm probably going to sell this 7mm, but I think it's going to be another 300 WSM. Although I'm a bit conflicted, my ticker has been so good to me. It's I almost feel like I'm cheating on it to get another one. But anyway,
yeah, it is funny how that works, though. We've had, like I said, we've had several other people come over since you were there. Several of them with 300 short mags or 300 Win Mags with those 200 grain terminal ascent bullets. Actually, Fernando on the podcast hunt, he had a 300 Win Mag with those bullets. That was like the only ammo he could find in 300 Win Mag, and I was like, that's perfect. That's what you need. And same deal. I mean, just absolutely hammered everything he shot with it. I don't think he recovered any bullets from it. I think everything he shot with it was one shot, just boom. That was the end of it. Mm-hmm. For the listener who doesn't know what we're talking about, this bullet is a improved trophy bonded bear claw bullet, where it has a solid rear shank and then a bonded front core that expands well, but not too much. And so it retains a lot of weight. It penetrates really well. So you get a combination of great penetration and expansion, and it has a great BC. And it's also designed to expand at a low-ish velocity. So you don't need a ton of velocity to get it to expand really well. So it's designed really well for longer range shooting with all of that stuff. But because it's so tough, these 50-yard shots that you got sometimes on big animals like kudu and whatnot, it handles that fine. But if you also shot something at 600 meters with it too, it worked just fine for that as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's been wonderful. And it's, funnily enough, like we've had such an ammunition shortage here in Australia. I was down to my final 2.5 boxes of that terminal ascent ammunition for the 300 and couldn't buy it for love or money in Australia. So I'd actually been saving it for most of the year for the Africa trip. And I was down to as I said, those last 2.5 boxes, but I got a call while I was over in Africa from my local gun store saying that the order that I'd placed 2 years ago, they've finally got some terminal ascent back in.
Oh my gosh.
So I took them all. So I said, I'll take it all. So I was very happy at that stage, knowing that I'd get back to Australia with another supply of the terminal ascent. But Friday, we then got a warthog. We were actually out looking for baboons, and we'd seen a bunch of baboons, but then we came across a really big warthog, or what everyone thought was a really big warthog. He was actually sitting in a feed trough, scaring off all animals, and was quite aggressive to everything. And he was sitting there and just occasionally putting his head up. So I had the 7mm, and we got very close on that, and we got to sort of 50 yards on that, and waited for him to put his head up through from the feed trough, and slotted in between the eyes. And he was a great warthog. Loved that. But one of my big ones was the next day was a kudu. We went to another property. We were very fortunate that Cobus has such great relationships with so many other properties in the area, and there was one particular property where he was a cattle farmer, and he was getting quite older, and he just had two knee operations, and was basically looking to retire and close down his operations. Was going to sell off the cattle, but there were a number of large kudu that frequented his property, and no one had actually ever hunted on the property except for him and his kids occasionally. But so we got the first invitation to go there, and we saw a big kudu that morning, just glimpses of it as we were wandering around. But it got quite hot quite quickly, and we were convinced that there was two of them actually, that they'd gone and bedded down for the day, and we wouldn't see them till later that day. and we were probably an hour's drive or so from home. So the choice was either go back home and come back later, or we could go and we could stay at the property and just wait and try and wait it out. And given that anything could happen, we decided to wait it out. It ended up being a bit brutal, but it was worth it. So we found the only water source on the area for some distance, and we decided to stay there on the basis that we thought they'd come in for something to drink later on that day. And that was sort of 10 a.m. when we first sat down there, and we were under this big old fallen down tree, and it was hot, like really hot that day, and still it was would have been high 90s Fahrenheit.
Mm-hmm.
We were approaching 40 degrees, and there was a bit of wind about, so it was like a hot wind. It was like we were sitting in a hairdryer, and we couldn't really talk. We wanted to be quiet under this tree, so we didn't really talk. We had no phone reception, so we had very limited phone reception, so there was very little we could do on that front, and we just waited it out. Anyway, it ended up being 6 hours that we were there under that tree. We'd had lots of hot wind. We had one of the mini twirly-bird tornado-y things, which they called a devil, or whatever else came through and just coated us in dust. And we had no food or drink, so we were very hungry and thirsty at that stage. But at 4 o'clock, the big kudu that we'd seen that morning started coming through, and that was a sight to behold. And it was again, got a little bit of buck fever when I saw him, but he came into the water. He jumped a fence on the way through. It was incredible how majestic they are and how easily they can clear almost anything. It was just effortless to jump over a 5-foot high fence, 4-foot high fence, whatever it was. And as he came in, he stopped, and I had a clear shot at him at about 60, 70 meters. And he jumped massively in the air and fell on the ground, and that's where he stopped. That was I'd taken over a trigger cam with me, one of the video units that you can put on your scope, and had recorded a lot of the shots with that, and that was a wonderful one to relive with that trigger cam.
Yeah, you were a bad influence on me with this. I actually just ordered a trigger cam for myself. I was, I liked the stuff that you were sending me from over there. So you sent me that one of the kudu, which was a great one. Then you also sent me one of your Blessbach. I'm sure it was the one you were just telling me about, your longer shot. And I think you sent me the one of the Warthog as well. I think there was one more that you sent me. I can't remember what it was, but I actually just ordered.
Might have been the Eland at the end.
Oh, you definitely yes. That was a good one too, with the eland. We'll talk about that here in a second. So you had a frontal shot on this kudu. Did you recover that bullet from
it? Yes, I did. I did actually. That was one I recovered. Let me just find my notes. No, the bullet was recovered on that. The second kudu, I didn't recover it. Yeah,
okay.
I've got the list of them here.
And so with this one, was that, did you shoot him with your 300?
Yeah, that was a 300 chest shot. The expansion was great on that projectile, and we recovered that bullet. It was a solid hit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and he didn't do hardly anything after that either.
No, he jumped in the air, all 4 feet were off the ground, and we had shots of that, and then landed on the ground, a few kicks, and was done.
That was a heck of a kudu that you shot too. I mean, that time of year, like I said, like they move around a lot and they're looking for stuff. And sometimes there'll be a kudu like that no one's ever seen before that just shows up. And sometimes they're really big and old like that one.
Yeah, they were big and wide. Rack that he had which was, when you saw it coming through the bush, it was like, oh my God. The curls weren't incredibly deep, but they were, as I said, nice and long and very wide at the top. Great old bull. Very, very happy with it.
Man, yeah, that was really cool. Yep. I was glad to hear that things worked out with that kudu for you.
Mm-hmm. And after that, and during some of those hunts there, I actually, eland was sort of on my list and sort of not on my list. I'd never been really super keen to shoot an eland. I thought it was like a big cow a lot of the times, but came across one there that had this really bluey sort of color to him, and loved the look of him when we were out looking for kudu, actually. And I said to Cobo, I said, if we get a chance, do you think we'd ever be able to find that eland again? If we've got everything else done, I'd love to go for that eland. And sure enough, we did a little bit later. But we'd previously seen on the river that's down near your boundary, we'd seen a couple of big kudus early in the piece that as we were driving around, there was no shot opportunity or anything else. But as we got towards the end of the trip, we decided we'd go and see if we could find those kudu. And this is down through the riverbank that when I was there last in April, that river was flowing and flowing deep, whereas now it was just a dry riverbed. So it's about 7 kilometers. No, it's a bit longer than that. I think he said it was 9 kilometers from boundary to boundary or something. We went down there and just went down one end and started to walk from one end to the other. Pardon me. And as we're walking through there, we'd found a bunch of dead cattle that had been caught in the mud and other dead animals. We found some tracks, some evidence of dogs attacking some of the animals and whatnot. But as we travelled further along, we started to get more sign of big kudu. And we came around a corner of this riverbank, and a kudu had bolted off that was in the riverbank with us. But then we suddenly saw 2 up on the high side of the bank behind a bunch of trees, and it was just all happened very, very quick. And these kudu took off. There's 2 of them, and Kobo said the back one's the bigger one. And I got on the sticks very quickly while it was running and had a shot, and it sounded good. Thought it was good. But then they kept running, and we were on the bend of a riverbank, and so we didn't know where it went. So we came around the riverbank and walked 50 meters, and there it was. It had dropped, and that was actually one of the more rewarding ones. It ended up being a much smaller kudu than my other kudu, but I absolutely loved that hunt. It was walking through that riverbank for hours and seeing a few other kudu and having that shot while he was on the run, and it hit him just behind the shoulders, and I think it was a double lung shot. It exited through the other side, just behind the shoulder as well. And but yeah, it was down, and was very, very happy with that one. But the recovery was an absolute pain in the butt, dragging it from the bottom of that riverbank back up the other riverbank through the bush and back to where we had some vehicles. That was tough going, and there was only the 3 of us that were there. Actually, the 4 of us, the cameraman as well, which was it made it tough, but it was great. It was very satisfying.
I'm glad you put Saki to work on that.
Yeah, well, Saki had been swanning about with the camera the whole time, so we told him, put the camera down. We're all got to lift this thing, and I was sort of glad it wasn't a much bigger kudu. Yeah. And then final day, we actually went after that eland, and we went out. It was again at another property, and we were in one particular area, and the other property gave us one of their guides to assist. And he mentioned to us when we were out there, he goes, "Oh, there are some buffalo in here, and there's one that's really cranky, and if he sees you, he's going to charge you." It's like, oh God, that's all I need. I'm not here for buffalo. Anyway, we're walking through sort of shoulder high bushes, and we heard this snort, and then brush being crushed, and so all I thought about was where's the nearest tree that I can beat Cobus to, and climb up. But I think it was a bit of a fake charge, but it certainly made us tighten our puckers. So that was, yeah, put a bit of fun into that part of it. But we kept going. We came across the eland that we're after, actually, and but we couldn't get a shot. It was really thick bush there, and any shots at shoulder height off the sticks were just going to hit too many sticks and whatever else through them. We couldn't really get a clear shot, but we spent about half an hour trying to move into different areas or follow them as they'd bolt off. We'd try and track them, and we got to one point where Cobus said, "Have you got your bipod with you?" It's like, oh no, my bipod's back in the vehicle, wherever that is. So Cobus jumped on the ground and said, "Use me." So I've actually had a human bipod. So I basically used Cobus's back as a rest, and we're able to get a shot at the eland through the shoulder. It was again with the 300. Solid hit on the front of it was quartering towards me from right to left. Hit it right on the apex or corner of the shoulder. It was a solid hit. It's such a big animal. They barely even reacted. It barely even reacted. We heard the big thump. It walked a few steps forward, and then it started to look like it was getting a little bit rocky. took a couple of steps backwards and then tipped over, but with no great reaction at the start. But that was just such a solid animal. When we got up to it, it's like, oh my God, it's just all just muscle and bone. But that was a great way to finish the trip.
Yeah, that was a big darn eland. Got a good patch of that dark fur on his forehead like that. Big blue bull, like they like to say.
Yeah. Yeah, that really stood out to me, being that blue color. It was I thought it'd be a great trophy, and it was a lot of fun, that hunt. And
did that bullet exit?
No, it was there. We didn't recover it. I think it ended up in the stomach somewhere.
Oh, okay, I see what you mean.
Yep.
All right,
so but we didn't recover that. The ones we did recover were the impala, the blessbok, zebra, kudu, and the gemsbok.
Okay. Yeah. So that was a busy hunt, and interesting, being in pretty much the same area but very different. You hunted some of the same animals, but some different animals on this one. You got to go down in the river. I didn't get to go down the river. It wasn't flowing when I was there in May, but there was standing water in it. I was wondering if that's where you were when I was watching the video. I was like, oh, that's a place I've never been before, because it's always had water in it.
Yeah, actually, with that, it was really funny. The acoustics, like I was able to use the suppressors there. Like, we don't get suppressors in Australia, so being able to borrow the suppressors at the farm was just incredible. It's you can basically hunt without ear protection. The recoil's so minimal. I'm so annoyed that we can't use them in Australia, but it was just wonderful being able to use those. But we were down but one thing you had to make sure was really double check your zero before you start using those, because my point of impact was off dramatically when I got there, by putting the suppressors on. Mm-hmm. But when we were going through that riverbanks or the riverbed looking for that kudu, and I had the shot, we all thought it was a misfire, because it was just the quietest sort of firing sound. I think all the sound got not ricocheted, got channeled upwards, and we barely heard it. Well, I thought it was a charge that had maybe half powder in it or whatever, because that sound was reflected upwards. But no, it turned out to be absolutely fine.
That's very interesting. Well, tell us a little bit about what your travel was like going back and forth from South Africa from Australia like that.
The travel was sort of really easy, in that we were fortunate that we have one of our airlines here in Australia has a direct flight to Johannesburg. So not having to do a double hop, because I do enough flying in Australia as it is, and I hate doing double hops anywhere. But so we're able to do a direct flight from Sydney to Joburg, and it was all pretty seamless. That's the Qantas flight. You have a couple of glasses of wine, a couple of meals, watch a movie, and you're there. I think it was a 12-hour flight, 13 hours, which is sort of similar to sort of Sydney to LA. Mm-hmm. But no, very easy.
Okay, well, good deal. That's what I thought the deal was with that. And so, say someone from New Zealand, do you think it would be the easiest for them to fly from like Auckland to Sydney and then catch that flight, or is there another way you know of?
Yeah, not sure. Because there are a couple of big Qantas planes that do direct to New York from Auckland now. So yeah, but they could either fly to Australia and fly from there. Just there are a lot of options, but yeah. So as I said, Qantas does direct from Sydney. There may be someone direct from New Zealand. Maybe Air New Zealand goes direct to Joburg. I'm not sure. Mm-hmm. But the flight's pretty easy. Even if they would go New Zealand or to Sydney, that's a really easy flight. For us, getting from Sydney to New Zealand's easier than getting from Sydney to Perth, which is Perth's the other side of our country. New Zealand's another country.
Well, I'm glad to hear that your flight to and from there was a piece of cake. That was a pleasant surprise when I learned about that, when I was talking to you and helping you coordinate that. You were actually my very first Australian hunter that went over there. It had a lot of Americans, a lot of Europeans and Canadians, but no one from Australia. But then we've had like 3 other guys since you were there. Mm-hmm.
It's the logistics of it was really easy, and I think a big part of that's thanks to you guys in terms of how well you organise it. In terms of, I knew that once I arrived there, Kobus and the team would be there waiting for me, so they collected me straight away. Once I had my luggage, went and got my rifle. They had an expedited system there where we didn't have to do much. They had a customs agent, for want of a better word, there that sorted out my firearms to come out straight away. Once they matched up the serial numbers, etc. So that was really easy, and we went straight from there, straight to the vehicle, and left. There wasn't a moment that I wasn't with your team, and the same on the way back. Checked in everything, and they saw me to the gate, basically, which is really reassuring.
So now that you've been twice, was there anything that you wish you knew before, especially before that first hunt, before you went over?
That I wish I knew. Not sure. Everything is a learning experience over there. It was so much fun. The second time around was about probably getting more animals on the ground, and I'd already experienced it. But no, look, the food was wonderful. That was a real revelation in terms of how good the food was, and being able to eat what you shoot every couple of days. What I shot on Monday, we'd eat on Wednesday, sort of thing. It was really fantastic, and seeing the whole absolute no waste of anything. Every animal we shot got butchered. We would eat the bits out of it that we wanted, given that we can't eat a whole beast ourselves, and given how many we're shooting. But then the staff would have some, and then whatever was left would the villagers would end up getting, which was great to see that absolutely nothing goes to waste. And the chef you had there was just fantastic. Lutondo.
Mm-hmm.
So that was great. But in terms of things that I wish I knew, there's probably not much, but the team there make everything so easy for you, and are so accommodating that if there's anything you really want to do, they'll make it happen. There's no gear that I wish I'd bought that I hadn't bought. I traveled very heavy anyway. All the gadgets that I bring, whatever it may be, including those trigger cams and whatever else, and bought my thermal. So we went out at night looking at wanted to get a bush pig off the gut pile. But they'd been there earlier, and but it was fun going out at night just with a thermal, looking at animals, and not hunting or anything. But that was a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm. Well, good deal. And now you still got to get the baboon, you got to get the bush pig. What else is on your list in the future there now?
Yeah, I don't know. I still haven't got the buffalo bug yet, but I think I may. But I just want to get these trophies. The biggest frustration is how long it takes to get the trophies home, actually. So it's probably going to be 9 to 12 months before they get back. But it'll be an exciting Christmas present for next year. But yeah, not sure what's on the list for next time. Still had such great memories of this trip. That I've worked through most of the things I really want, but I'm sure I'll think of a few more to do. And it's just such great fun over there with Cobus and the team.
Yeah, you're only back 2 months too, so this hunt is still just real fresh and kind of raw for you. I know the feeling, and I just kind of got over it myself, and I'm trying to work myself up into try and get something back on the calendar to get back over there. You got your taxidermy finished in Africa on your first trip, right? Are you doing that for your second trip too?
Yes, exactly the same. Different taxidermists, from what I understand. But no, it's just get them to do everything and ship it back in one big, super expensive crate.
Yeah, and I remember, we could talk about that too. Like your deal when you went over there early 2022, they were still like working through all the COVID craziness and the backlog they had there, and so shipping prices were just outrageous. And I'm glad they were able to get you a shipment over there with that other shipping agent that was quite a bit less expensive than you were originally quoted, even though I'm sure it was more than you wanted to pay anyway, though. But it wasn't as bad as it could have been.
Yeah, no, that first quote, I basically said to them I could get 2 business class flights back to there and bring them back in their own seats. And so that was, as you say, when there was still all the COVID craziness from supply chain issues, and shipping costs were through the roof. And the ultimate price that I got was about a third of that through another operator, which was great. It was actually quite a good number at the end of the day. And it is a significant volume and weight that they end up shipping back with those 7 animals, and there was only 2 shoulder mounts. The rest were Euros and rugs. It still takes up a very big crate to bring over, so you can understand why it's so expensive. Not so expensive; it's just expensive.
Yeah,
without being crazy.
Yeah, I shot on one of my trips over there, I came back with 4 shoulder mounts of stuff. So it was a water buck, a black wildebeest, blessed buck, and a mountain reed buck. So like a big animal, a medium animal, 2 small animals. And that crate weighed about 250 pounds. I mean, that thing was they did a good job of packing it in there and not wasting a lot of space, but man, it was big and it was heavy. It was everything I could do to move that thing around and get everything out of it. And, you have an even bigger crate than that sometimes if a guy has a really big hunt, then it can get expensive in a hurry with that. So I'm glad that by the time your stuff was ready to come home from the first hunt, it wasn't nearly as expensive as it was. And hopefully it's going to be more of that same deal, especially with that less expensive freight company that we found the second time around for you.
Yep. And everything worked great with them. It was just that they made it pretty easy. With Australia, the one problem with Australia, they like taxing you on everything. When everything got here, there was quite a few taxes to pay at the Australian end for inspections and import duties and whatever else, which for what they're doing, I don't consider it a lot of value out of that. But it's just something we're stuck with no matter where you bring the stuff in from.
Mm-hmm. Now, you said, though, that once you got your stuff back from that first hunt, everything looked great and you were very happy with the quality of the taxidermy.
Oh, it's wonderful. It was, it was better than I ever thought it would be. The taxidermy was fantastic, and the quality of the rugs and the shoulder mounts were great.
So we've talked about a lot over the course of the last hour. We talked about your taxidermy, travel to and from, the 7 Rem Mag versus the 300 short mag, and the disparity in performance there. A lot of interesting stories from two different times a year in South Africa. A lot of good times with you and Kubis out there, wading through water together, dealing with really, really hot, dry conditions there together. There's a reason why Kevin Robertson refers to October as the suicide season in Africa, huh?
I can understand that. Yeah.
Anything else that we missed that you think we need to cover before we wrap it up?
No, look, it really is a wonderful trip that you have, and the amount of experience you get over there in terms of hunting experience and how you develop as a hunter and a shooter, I don't think can be understated. And I've realized that I am definitely a 30 cal guy after those trips. I just like that extra terminal performance and wallop. But no, look, I'd encourage anyone, if you're thinking of doing it, get out and do it. There's lots of different packages that you have and others have for what can be a reasonably affordable hunting trip, but it's a once in a lifetime type of thing. But there's plenty. If you're thinking of doing it, they can get lots of great assistance from you and the guys over there. It's very safe. There's no problems. The accommodation, actually, we didn't cover the accommodation. The accommodation that you've got there is absolutely first class. It's absolutely beautiful. The huts, what do you call them? What do we call them? The chalets?
Yeah, chalets, bungalows. Yeah.
Bungalows, that's probably the best word, like a bungalow. They've been fantastic. And actually the video, one thing I'd say, I decided on this hunt that I wanted to get a video made of my hunt with having a cameraman come around, which you organised, which was excellent, and that's been absolutely fantastic as a memory of the hunt. It was each night they'd do the editing and whatever else, and then by the time I got to my last day of my hunt, they gave me a USB stick with the whole hunt on it, all dubbed and whatever else, and it's been fantastic. I've watched that a gazillion times. I think I watched it twice on the plane on the way home, so I've got an hour's video of my 10 days over there, and I'd highly encourage anyone that wants to do it to do that as a reminder.
Yeah, in your case too, since you had your trigger cam footage that you were taking through your scope, Saki was able to splice that footage in there too and add it into the video, which I thought was a cool touch as well. Yeah,
each day I'd give him a USB stick or a memory card actually of my videos from the trigger cam, and he'd incorporate it into the video. Although he was nice enough not to incorporate too much. The first zebra that I went for, I actually had this zebra lined up and had the trigger cam going, squeezed the trigger, click, nothing in the chamber. And then it's like, bugger. And as I'm reloading, it made so much noise that the zebra's then gone. And So yeah, he didn't include too much of that on the on the video, but that was one on the outtake reels.
Well, like I said, it happens sometimes. Guys do that. Guys try and shoot with the safety on. Sometimes there's a joke I heard once that taking the safety off your rifle increases muzzle velocity by 100%. That was a Ryan Kleckner joke I heard from him one time. I've been there and done that before, so don't feel bad. But I think it was cool how he would run, say, like a picture-in-picture with his footage from you shooting the animal, and then like your trigger cam crosshair footage shown simultaneously. So that was all really cool. And like I said, I'm getting one for myself, so we'll see how it all works out for me too.
But that's where the having a hunt over numerous days with numerous animals really gives you a chance to work out your equipment. Like, I wasn't very good with that trigger cam at the start of all that, because I'd only ever used it on hunts where you get to use it once and you forget to turn it on, or you forget to do this, or you press the wrong button, and it becomes a pain. But by the time I'd got sort of 3 animals with it, I was suddenly an expert on using it, and it was great. So it gives you that much more experience at using your gear and what works and what to do each time, so that when you do use it on another hunt where you've only going after one animal, you know what you're doing with your kit.
Yeah, and that is a good point too. And you can, having been there and done it a couple times, it's easy to understand now why when a gun or an ammo company is introducing a new rifle or a new line of ammo or something like that, they'll send it to a couple of their employees and send them to Africa and go hunt there for a couple of weeks, and you can get a lot of experience real quickly and see if this stuff works or if it doesn't, and see what bugs you need to work out of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great way to do it. I can understand.
Well, Scott, it was great having you on the show today. It's been a pleasure to finally actually get a chance to talk to you, having corresponded with you via email so long. I'm glad to hear you had great hunts, and I appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule to share those experiences with us today.
You're very welcome. It's been absolute pleasure, and it's been great, as you say, corresponding with you over the last few years, and it's been good to do it on audio rather than just via emails. But appreciate all the assistance you've given me, and looking forward to another trip.
Okay, I hope you enjoyed that episode as much as I did. Now, next week, the Africa series continues with an in-depth profile of a classic, and you could even say a legendary Africa hunting cartridge that we have not talked about too much on the show in detail previously. That's another great show, so don't miss it. And don't forget, stop by, say hello to Kubis, Christian, and I at the Bridge Bar at the Renaissance Nashville Hotel, 7 to 9 p.m., 1 and 2 February. Now, if you liked what you heard from Scott and I on this podcast and you want a hunt along those lines for yourself, we still do have a couple of openings left for March, September, October, and early November 2024. I'm also booking for 2025 at this instant as well. Things have been very busy on that front, though. This is a busy time of year where a lot of people are booking hunts. As I record this, I have availability most months still, but I'm not sure how long that's going to last. I've been getting a lot of new bookings lately. So I can take you for those months in 2024 or most months in 2025. And if you book a hunt with us, you'll be hunting with Kubis, Christian, and or Johan in that exact same area where Scott talked about hunting in this episode. And of course, I'll also be available to you to help answer questions, sort out logistics, and just do everything possible to ensure your mind is at ease, that you are properly prepared, and that you have a fun trip. You can hunt plains game, you can hunt buffalo, you can hunt both if you'd like. Email me, John at thebiggamehuntingblog.com, or visit bestsafarihunt.com to learn a little bit more about things. Make sure you tell me you're a podcast listener when you contact me, and I will give you a special bonus. Remember, you can make your dream hunt turn into a reality, and we can help. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you back here next time on the Big Game Hunting Podcast.
This show may be over, but we have plenty more for you on our website. For more information on today's topic, as well as lots of other useful hunting resources, head over to thebiggamehuntingblog.com. We look forward to having you back for the next episode. But until then, happy hunting.